So, Rick, let's talk about how the Chiefs were built. We just talked about the Eagles in the last segment, and I think the conversation perhaps could start with Andy Reid, but we're going to start with Patrick Mahomes, drafted in 2017, the second quarterback off the board after Mitch Trubisky. And at the time, the Vikings, when you were the general manager, did not have a first-round pick. That first-round pick you had traded to Philly, incidentally, for Sam Bradford the year before because Teddy Bridgewater got hurt, unfortunately, in the preseason. And there's a little twist to that we'll talk about later with that trade. But you took Dalvin Cook first with the second-round pick. But you still evaluated the quarterbacks, and you had Patrick Mahomes in, and you spoke with him. What was your takeaway from Patrick Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech as a gunslinger?
Yeah, no, he was definitely a gunslinger when you put the tape on. And he was one of the most off-schedule, creative quarterbacks that came out in that year's draft, and maybe one of the all-timers as far as running that air raid offense down there at Texas Tech. So we actually did interview him and sat down and interviewed him at the Combine that year, and very impressive. A lot of questions were because of that air raid offense, how quickly was he going to be able to adapt to an NFL offense? I thought and think Andy Reid and that staff has done a phenomenal job. And again, this is what makes great coaches great, is understanding what each kid's strengths and weaknesses are. Mm-hmm. So they built an offense, and Eric Bieniemy did a phenomenal job building an offense around what Patrick Mahomes does best. And so that's why I think you're seeing the results that you're seeing. But, a lot of people weren't sure about him when he came out. Some people, I'm sure I didn't see your mock draft back then, but some people had him in the second round. Kansas City really fell in love with him, went up and got him where they picked him in the middle of the first round. The thing that benefited him the most probably was his chance to just sit and learn from Alex Smith for a year.
Which is hard to do.
But they showed the patience. Alex Smith did a great job while he was there. He wasn't going to be the answer to getting them to the Super Bowl. And then after Mahomes had his redshirt year, or learning from a guy like Alex Smith, who's probably a great veteran quarterback to learn from, and then the rest is history.
And not only that, because the Chiefs are the Chiefs, it feels like they were able to parlay Alex Smith into a trade for, I believe, 2 first-round picks, and they made out on the back end as well. Went to the playoffs during Patrick Mahomes' first season with Alex Smith as the starter for most of that season. So 2017, Mahomes was rookie. He sat. This Chiefs rookie class, Brett Veach hit an absolute grand slam. Pick after pick, almost like as you got farther into the draft, they got more production out of those guys. You go to the very bottom, you have Isaiah Pacheco, the running back out of Rutgers. You have Jalen Watson, the 7th rounder out of Washington State, and both those guys contributed often. You've watched every single snap of every one of these players. That's all you're doing yesterday. I told you to take a break. You refused. Give me some of your favorites from this draft class in terms of the contributions they provided.
Well, first you got to recognize the Kansas City Chiefs. And opposite of what the Philadelphia Eagles did, and went and traded for A.J. Brown, they traded maybe one of the most explosive playmakers in the game right now in Tyreek Hill to Miami. So what they do, they capitalize on those picks that they received. They did do some trading up and down with the New England Patriots, but they ended up with McDuffie, the corner from Washington who played Nick. He got hurt during the year, but he's played his best football since they started the playoffs. And when you watch him on tape, the thing that really stuck out the most was his instinctual awareness in zone coverage, and that's when they started to develop. And we'll talk about a couple of these other, Watson, for example, and a couple of the other young guys in the secondary. When you look at what the Chiefs did the second half of the season, okay, they played a lot more zone coverage, and they weren't bringing 8 men down in the box. So that put a lot less stress on those guys as they continue to grow and learn. And Karlaftis, who came out of Purdue, 7 of his 8 sacks, he had 8 sacks this year, came since week 12. So what you're seeing is the evolution of these rookies when they come in, learning the game. They got thrown into the fire right away. They took some of their lumps early, except they're still able to win games.
Right.
Now, as these rookies are starting to peak, and now you're starting to see them evolve as legitimate starters in this league, that's why Kansas City is where they're at.
And in terms of looking to the future, just briefly, even if they are in fantastic shape, perhaps salary cap wise. Now you're paying Patrick Mahomes a king's ransom, understandably so. Kelsey makes a lot of money, but if you have 6 guys on the roster who are making day 2, day 3 contract money, that allows you to do other things to help the other players that are coming up for contracts. And in part explains why perhaps they decided to move from Tyreek Hill, which feels like that would be incredibly tough to do as well.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they were going to be able to afford Tyreek Hill. So when you're in those meetings and you're in your salary cap meetings and you know you got Mahomes, you got Kelsey under contract, they went out and signed Smith-Schuster, Valdez,
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Scantling, yeah. And those guys contributed. Are they Tyreek Hill? No. But did they help them win games? Yes. And we saw that last week. Sky Moore, who's developing as a slot, he's going to be a very good player for him. He had a couple of muff punts this year, but has really rebounded and played well the second half of the year since those occurred. And then they hit on 2 7th-rounders that we talked about. You know, you got Jalen Watson, a 7th-rounder. He's a 6'2" corner, and when you watch tape on him, he came out of Washington State. He ran 4.51. His athletic numbers were not exceptional.
Right.
But the one thing you notice, and he had 3 interceptions this year, 2 coming in the playoffs, one-hander against Jacksonville. Everybody saw the one early in the season, the 98-yard pick 6. I think it was against the L.A. Chargers.
That's right.
And then he had one last week against the Cincinnati Bengals. But his ball skills are very unique. He did give up a touchdown to Higgins, though, also in that game, but that happens as well. But his biggest strength is when they play him in press coverage and they let him run with the receivers, because he can stay with receivers downfield. And when you have that size, when you have that frame, when you have that athletic skill set to go get the ball in the air, that was a great find for them. And that's what you're looking for. When you can get guys that are late round picks, 7th-rounders, even college free agents, those contracts are even a lot cheaper than they are maybe on the Friday guys and for sure on the Thursday guys. So that's going to give you the flexibility from a cap standpoint to keep some of your own or to go out and potentially be active in free agency if you need to do that.
So a couple fun facts here. Let's see. In the NFL, the Chiefs, this rookie class, led the NFL in snaps played by first or second-year players, almost 10,000 snaps, which is mind-boggling. Let's see. Oh, the other thing I want to talk about is Travis Kelce. So I think he's going to be a pretty good football player when it's all said and done. Just a guess here. But you mentioned this to me earlier, that when he was coming out, the reason he wasn't a top 75 pick is because back in the day for Travis Kelce in his early 30s was, 10 years ago, he wasn't blocking anyone. You wanted inline tight ends to block.
The game has totally evolved since then. And, when he came out of the University of Cincinnati, everybody saw the athletic ability. He can run, he can catch, he can create some mismatches if he's matched up against a safety or a linebacker. But he wasn't a very good blocker when he came out. And back then, there were a lot of teams running that West Coast offense where the tight ends are heavily involved, not only in a passing game, but they have to be able to block. So probably because of that knocked him down in the draft. But as this game evolved, and then when they got Patrick Mahomes and their offense evolved, again, this is what great coaches do. Okay, I'm not going to put Kelce as a wide tight end and have him try to block a defensive end for 35 plays a game. That's not going to work. But let's go put him in a slot. Let's put him out wide. He's got a phenomenal instinct to find open areas between zones. Great hands, great after the catch. All the things that he did well in college, he's even doing better now in the NFL, and why he's probably the best tight end in the game right now.
And again, fit matters. Andy Reid plus Patrick Mahomes plus Travis Kelce equals.
Right, and when you mention those stats about all those first and second year players, it's great. But when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, that, as we said, can put lipstick on a pig, hide a lot of warts, whatever old term you want to use. That covers up a lot of things that as these guys grow, they're still able to overcome because of Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback.
Absolutely.